The arrival of the Philistines on the southern coast of Canaan occurred during a period of profound confusion in the eastern Mediterranean, known as the Late Bronze Age collapse, around 1200 BC. This era was marked by the disintegration of established empires, widespread destruction of cities, disruptions in long-distance trade, and the movement of diverse populations across the region. The destabilization of Egypt, the Hittite Empire, and other major powers created opportunities for new groups to migrate and settle in the Levant. Among these were the Philistines, an Aegean-derived people, who entered the southern coastal zone of Canaan as part of the larger phenomenon historically identified as the Sea Peoples. Egyptian inscriptions provide the earliest explicit documentation of the Philistines' presence. In particular, the reliefs and texts at Medinet Habu, dating to the reign of Ramesses III, circa 1186 to 1155 BC, record the invasion of a coalition of maritime groups referred to as the Sea Peoples. Among these, one group is explicitly labeled the Peleset, widely recognized by historians and archaeologists as the Philistines. These records detail military incursions into Egyptian territory along the Nile Delta, subsequent defeat by Egyptian forces, and the settlement of captured groups in the southern Levant as part of the Egyptian administration's policy of securing buffer zones against future threats. The Medinet Habu inscriptions depict the Peleset with distinct attire, weapons, and maritime equipment, emphasizing their origins as seafaring migrants rather than indigenous Canaanite populations. Archaeological evidence corroborates the Egyptian textual record. Excavations along the southern Levantine coast, particularly at the future Philistine city sites of Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath, reveal the sudden appearance of a material culture distinct from the preceding Late Bronze Age Canaanite settlements. This includes bichrome pottery, characterized by geometric and stylized motifs painted in red and black on a light background, as well as ceramic forms reflecting Aegean prototypes, hearths, storage installations, and architectural layouts, including rectilinear houses built with mud brick and ashlar foundations, indicate continuity of urban planning alongside the introduction of new construction techniques. These innovations mark the Philistine settlers as culturally and technologically differentiated from neighboring Canaanite groups. Settlement patterns demonstrate a strategic approach to coastal occupation. The 5 principal cities that later constituted the Philistine Pentapolis were located on fertile plains with access to the Mediterranean and nearby inland routes. Gaza, at the southern extremity, controlled the passage between Egypt and Canaan, while Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Ashkelon dominated the central coastal corridor, enabling both trade and defense. Ekron, positioned slightly inland, provided access to agricultural hinterlands and the logistical capacity to support larger urban populations. Gath, further inland than the other cities, functioned as a strategic military and trade node linking the coastal settlements with the hill country communities. These locations allowed the Philistines to integrate maritime capabilities with control over fertile land, facilitating their rapid establishment as a dominant coastal presence. The initial migration and settlement of the Philistines also involved the adaptation and assimilation of local practices. While the Aegean-derived material culture persisted, evidence shows adoption of Canaanite technologies, including agricultural methods, pottery forms, and regional architectural conventions. Early Philistine settlements display a mixture of continuity and innovation. They constructed defensive walls in response to local security conditions, organized urban centers around courtyards and streets, and implemented storage facilities suitable for agricultural surplus. This combination of Aegean origin techniques and Canaanite adaptation demonstrates a pragmatic approach to settlement in a new environment, reflecting both the retention of cultural identity and the necessity of interaction with established local populations. Chronologically, the arrival of the Philistines around 1200 BC corresponds with other major regional transformations. The Hittite Empire collapses, Mycenaean centers in Greece decline, and Egypt confronts repeated incursions from maritime migrants. In this context, the settlement of the Peleset represents not merely a local demographic shift, but a wider phenomenon of population movement and urban reorganization in the eastern Mediterranean. The Philistines' maritime origin, combined with their settlement in strategic coastal locations, allowed them to control trade networks connecting the Levant, Cyprus, Anatolia, and the Aegean Islands. Archaeological layers and sites like Ashkelon and Ashdod reveal imported pottery, metallurgy, and craft objects indicative of Mediterranean-wide exchange, demonstrating the Philistines' integration into broader regional trade systems. Military evidence from fortifications and weaponry also aligns with the Egyptian accounts of the Peleset as a seafaring and combat-capable group. Excavations at early Philistine sites revealed defensive walls, gates, and towers constructed from large stones, reflecting both practical defensive needs and the importation of architectural techniques from the Aegean. Armaments, including bronze weapons and tools, conform to late Bronze Age maritime styles, further substantiating the historical identification of these settlers with the sea peoples described in Egyptian texts. The archaeological record additionally indicates demographic expansion following initial settlement. Evidence of planned urban layouts, residential density, and storage facilities suggests population growth and the capacity to sustain both agricultural and maritime economies. These factors collectively illustrate the Philistines' ability to establish durable urban centers that would persist for several centuries and eventually develop into the Pentapolis structure. Interactions with local populations in this period remain historically documented but limited. Material evidence shows coexistence with Canaanite communities through trade, adoption of certain agricultural practices, and selective incorporation of local building techniques. No verifiable records indicate large-scale displacement or extermination of indigenous populations. Rather, archaeological continuity in certain settlement layers suggests partial integration or coexistence alongside the newly arrived Philistines. By the end of this initial migration phase, around 1175 BC, the Philistines had established a coastal network of settlements that would form the foundation for later political, economic, and cultural development. These settlements were characterized by fortifications, distinct Aegean-influenced material culture, strategic control of trade routes, and pragmatic adaptation to the Canaanite environment. This period of arrival and migration set the stage for the development of urban governance, trade networks, and the eventual emergence of the Pentapolis, defining the Philistines as a historically verifiable people in the southern Levant. Following the initial settlement of the Philistines along the southern coast of Canaan around 1200 BC, the population consolidated into organized urban centers, establishing the foundation for what would become the Pentapolis, composed of the cities Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath. By approximately 1175 BC, archaeological and textual evidence demonstrate that these settlements had developed into fortified city-states, each functioning independently yet maintaining a degree of coordination reflective of shared cultural and strategic interests. The choice of locations for these urban centers was dictated by a combination of geographic, economic, and defensive considerations. Gaza, situated at the southern terminus of the coastal plain, controlled the route connecting Egypt to the Levantine interior, serving both as a trade hub and as a strategic military checkpoint. Ashkelon and Ashdod occupied the central coastal corridor, providing access to fertile plains and maritime routes, while Ashdod also controlled the junction between the coastal plain and inland highlands. Ekron, slightly inland from the coast, offered access to agricultural hinterlands capable of supporting surplus production, and Gath, located further inland, functioned as a defensive and logistical center, linking the coastal cities to hill country settlements. This spatial distribution allowed the Philistines to maximize control over trade, agriculture, and security, ensuring the longevity of their settlements. Archaeological excavations reveal that each city underwent significant urban planning. Fortification walls, constructed with large stones and mud brick superstructures, indicate a persistent concern with defense. Towers and gates were positioned to oversee key approaches, and internal street networks were organized to facilitate both residential and administrative functions. Residential buildings, often rectilinear and grouped around central courtyards, demonstrate consistency with Aegean building traditions, while modifications to fit the Canaanite environment reflect adaptation to local climatic and social conditions. Storage facilities for grain and other agricultural products indicate both economic foresight and the ability to sustain populations through seasonal variability. Material culture provides further evidence of the Philistines' distinct identity within the Pentapolis. Pottery assemblages include the continued production of bichrome ware, which displays geometric and figurative motifs painted in red and black. Such ceramics are stylistically linked to Aegean prototypes, demonstrating continuity with the settlers' original cultural practices. Simultaneously, pottery forms adapted to local culinary and storage needs, illustrating a hybridization of imported techniques with regional demands. Metallurgical evidence, including bronze tools and weaponry, confirms both craft specialization and integration into broader Mediterranean trade networks, suggesting a level of economic sophistication capable of sustaining city-state economies. The governance of these city-states was structured around local rulers and councils, though evidence for formal hierarchies remains limited to inscriptions and material indicators. The Pentapolis appears to have operated as a loosely coordinated confederation, likely convening for mutual defense and coordination of trade. This is inferred from the uniformity of material culture and fortification practices across cities, as well as from the distribution of imported goods, suggesting shared access to Mediterranean trade networks. Despite this coordination, each city retained autonomy in internal administration, resource allocation, and urban planning. Military considerations played a prominent role in the development of the Pentapolis. Archaeological layers reveal cycles of destruction and rebuilding across multiple sites, consistent with documented regional conflicts during the early Iron Age. These may reflect skirmishes with neighboring Canaanite settlements, incursions by emerging Israelite tribes, or broader regional instability following the collapse of major late Bronze Age powers. Evidence of bronze weapons, defensive walls, and strategically positioned towers underscores the Pentapolis' capacity to withstand both local and external threats. These military preparations were critical for the survival and growth of the Philistine cities during this turbulent period. Trade and economic activity were integral to the Pentapolis development. Excavations at Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Ekron reveal storage facilities and imported pottery from Cyprus, Anatolia, and the Aegean, indicating that the Philistines were active participants in long-distance exchange networks. Imports included luxury items, metallurgical materials, and ceramics, while exports likely comprised agricultural products, processed goods, and possibly manufactured bronze implements. The combination of agricultural productivity, maritime access, and artisanal capacity facilitated a robust urban economy capable of sustaining both population growth and military needs. Cultural integration with local populations is evident in multiple aspects of the Pentapolis development. Burial practices show a mixture of Aegean-style techniques, such as chamber tombs and cremation rituals, alongside local Canaanite traditions. Architectural adaptations, including the use of mud brick and local stone, reflect practical integration into the Levantine environment. This synthesis of Aegean and Canaanite elements indicates a pragmatic approach to settlement, balancing the retention of cultural identity with the necessity of adaptation to new ecological and social contexts. The Pentapolis also interacted with emerging Israelite groups in the interior highlands. Archaeological evidence, such as destruction layers and shifts in settlement patterns in the adjacent hill country regions, suggests periodic conflict and competition for resources. These interactions were primarily localized and did not result in large-scale demographic displacement, but they demonstrate the Philistines' role in the broader dynamics of early Iron Age Canaan. The Pentapolis thus functioned as both a regional political and military entity and as an economic hub facilitating interaction with neighboring populations. Chronologically, the formation of the Pentapolis around 1175 to 1000 BC represents a critical consolidation phase for the Philistines. Urban organization, fortification strategies, and economic integration established the structural and cultural foundation that allowed the Philistines to maintain prominence along the southern Levantine coast for several centuries. The Pentapolis development illustrates the capacity of a migrant population to establish durable urban centers, integrate selectively with indigenous populations, and exploit both maritime and terrestrial resources. By the end of this period, each of the 5 cities had achieved sustained urban development. Gaza controlled the southern trade and communication routes. Ashkelon and Ashdod dominated central coastal trade and agriculture. Ekron functioned as a strategic inland hub, and Gath provided a defensive and logistical link to inland territories. This configuration enabled the Philistines to consolidate both cultural and political influence along the southern coastal plain, positioning the Pentapolis as a stable and cohesive network despite ongoing regional turbulence. Following the establishment of the Pentapolis in the late 12th century BC, Philistine society entered a period of cultural and economic consolidation that persisted through the early Iron Age. From approximately 1100 BC to 900 BC, the Philistine city-states, Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath, demonstrated sustained urban development, complex material culture, and integration into regional trade networks, marking the height of their distinct identity in the southern Levant. Archaeology confirms that this era represents a peak in both the cultural distinctiveness and economic sophistication of the Philistines, characterized by a hybridization of Aegean traditions and local Canaanite practices. Material culture during this period reflects continuity with the Philistines' Aegean origins while adapting to the local Levantine context. Excavations at Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Ekron reveal bichrome pottery, painted in red and black on a light slip, incorporating both geometric and stylized motifs. These ceramics are linked to Aegean prototypes, yet certain forms, storage jars, cooking vessels, and local tableware show modifications suited to the dietary habits and practical needs of Canaanite-influenced households. The coexistence of imported and locally adapted forms indicates a selective process of cultural adaptation, whereby Aegean craft techniques persisted alongside functional innovation. Archaeological evidence further illustrates architectural hybridization. Rectilinear houses built with mud brick on ashlar foundations retained aspects of Aegean urban planning, such as central courtyards, yet were adapted to local environmental and social conditions. Fortification walls, constructed of large stone blocks and mud brick superstructures, continued to protect the cities, reflecting both inherited Aegean defensive concepts and practical responses to regional security threats. Public and domestic buildings exhibit an increasing incorporation of local building methods, demonstrating an adaptive approach to urban construction. Trade and economic activity expanded significantly during this period. Philistine cities maintained maritime connections across the eastern Mediterranean, importing luxury goods, pottery, and metallurgical materials from Cyprus, Anatolia, and the Aegean. Archaeological evidence at Ashkelon and Ashdod includes Cypriot white slip II pottery and metal ingots, confirming participation in long-distance exchange networks. Exports likely consisted of agricultural products, such as cereals and olives, as well as processed goods, including finished bronze tools and weapons. Trade facilitated wealth accumulation within the cities and contributed to the consolidation of social hierarchies. The Philistines' economic success supported population growth and urban density within the Pentapolis. Residential quarters display storage installations capable of supporting surplus production, while centralized courtyards indicate communal planning and social organization. Grain silos, cisterns, and storage rooms reflect logistical sophistication, ensuring that the cities could withstand both seasonal fluctuations and intermittent conflict. Archaeological survey data from surrounding hinterlands show the intensification of agricultural exploitation, demonstrating that the Philistines had established a balanced urban-rural economic system capable of sustaining complex city life. Cultural hybridization extended to dietary and burial practices, indicating selective integration of Canaanite customs. Archaeological studies reveal increased reliance on locally available livestock and plant resources, suggesting adaptation to regional ecological conditions. Burial evidence, including chamber tombs and pottery interments, exhibits both Aegean-derived and Canaanite characteristics, illustrating a negotiated cultural synthesis. This blending of practices reflects a deliberate and systematic adaptation to local norms while retaining elements of Philistine identity, supporting social cohesion within the Pentapolis. Language during this period underwent a significant transition. Initial inscriptions and linguistic analysis suggest that the Philistines originally spoke an Indo-European language, consistent with their Aegean origin. Over the early Iron Age, local Semitic dialects gradually supplanted the original tongue, a process attested by the emergence of Semitic inscriptions in Philistine contexts. This linguistic shift did not occur abruptly, but unfolded over several generations, accompanying broader processes of cultural integration and economic interconnection with neighboring populations. Militarily, the period was marked by continued attention to city defense. Excavated fortification walls display evidence of multiple construction phases, with reinforcement and repair indicative of ongoing security concerns. The presence of bronze and iron weaponry, including swords, spearheads, and arrowheads, reflects both local production and participation in Mediterranean-wide metallurgical networks. Archaeological layers reveal occasional destruction, consistent with regional skirmishes and internal conflict, yet the resilience of urban centers attests to effective strategies of defense and recovery. Interaction with the surrounding Canaanite and emerging Israelite populations was multifaceted. Archaeological evidence demonstrates both coexistence and conflict. Settlement continuity in certain highland and lowland areas indicates trade, exchange of craft techniques, and agricultural cooperation, while destruction layers suggest episodes of military engagement. The Philistines' role in these dynamics reflects their position as a cohesive coastal confederation, capable of asserting influence over trade routes, agricultural resources, and regional power balances. Religious practices, while archaeologically visible, cannot be interpreted with theological assumptions. Temples and cultic installations excavated at Ashdod and Ekron demonstrate dedicated spaces for communal ritual, but evidence remains culturally and materially specific, without the need to invoke legendary or biblical narratives. These structures further illustrate the hybridization of architectural and functional traditions, combining Aegean layouts with Levantine materials and construction methods. By the end of this period, the Philistine city-states had achieved a high degree of economic sophistication, urban integration, and cultural hybridization. Each city retained distinctive features, yet collectively the Pentapolis represented a coherent cultural and political network capable of sustaining complex social structures, trade relations, and military defense. The combination of Aegean-derived craft, local architectural adaptation, agricultural productivity, and strategic positioning along maritime and terrestrial trade routes ensured that the Philistines remained a dominant presence along the southern Levantine coast. Chronologically, the period from 1100 BC to 900 BC represents the height of the Philistines' independent identity. Their material culture, urban development, and economic infrastructure attest to a people capable of both preserving inherited traditions and selectively integrating new elements. The Pentapolis functioned as a hub of trade, craft, and defense, laying the foundation for later interaction with regional empires and eventual incorporation into wider political systems during the Neo-Assyrian period. Archaeological continuity, reinforced by imported materials and inscriptions, provides verifiable historical evidence of this cultural flourishing. Unlike later textual narratives subject to theological or legendary distortion, the Philistines' material footprint offers a direct window into their society, illustrating adaptive strategies, economic organization, and urban life. This period confirms the Philistines as a historically tangible people whose hybrid culture reflects the dynamics of migration, settlement, and regional interaction in the early Iron Age Levant. By 900 BC, the Philistine cities had established a durable and integrated urban culture marked by resilience in the face of environmental and military pressures, sophistication in trade and craft, and the successful synthesis of Aegean and Levantine cultural elements. This cultural flourishing and hybridization would underpin the political and military interactions with the Neo-Assyrian Empire in the subsequent centuries, demonstrating the enduring historical presence of the Philistines across the southern Levant. By the early Iron Age, approximately 1100 to 900 BC, the Philistine city-states had established a durable political and administrative framework capable of sustaining urban development, economic activity, and regional influence. The five principal cities of the Pentapolis, Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath, each retained a degree of autonomy while operating within a loosely coordinated confederation that allowed for mutual defense, economic cooperation, and collective decision-making on matters affecting the southern coastal plain. Archaeological, inscriptional, and comparative evidence provide a clear picture of this system, revealing structured governance, urban administration, and hierarchical organization without reliance on mythological or legendary sources. Each city-state was centered on a ruling authority, frequently designated as a king or local chief. The presence of rulers is confirmed primarily through inscriptions and seal impressions, particularly in Ekron, where administrative documents in the early Iron Age record the names of local kings and their civic responsibilities. These inscriptions indicate that rulers exercised authority over taxation, trade regulation, military organization, and ceremonial or religious oversight. The consistency of administrative markers across multiple city-states implies that these positions were both hereditary and institutionalized, reflecting a structured approach to governance capable of managing urban populations and surrounding agricultural territories. Despite the autonomy of individual cities, the Pentapolis exhibited features of intercity coordination. Archaeological evidence, including uniformity in fortification construction, standardization of certain pottery types, and shared urban planning concepts, suggests that the city-states maintained a framework for collective action. This coordination likely focused on defense against common threats, including local Canaanite tribes, emerging Israelite groups, and later incursions by Neo-Assyrian forces. While no surviving textual records specify formal councils, the material evidence of shared urban standards indicates negotiation and collaboration among the city-states, which functioned as a cohesive yet flexible confederation. The administrative capacity of the Philistine cities is further demonstrated by the organization of urban infrastructure. Street networks, public buildings, and storage facilities reveal planning for both daily civic life and strategic contingencies. Storage installations, including silos and granaries, were strategically located to manage agricultural surplus and distribute resources during periods of scarcity or conflict. Archaeological remains of workshops and craft centers illustrate the management of artisanal production, while evidence of imported goods highlights the regulation of trade and exchange networks. Collectively, these features attest to effective municipal governance, integrating economic, military, and social functions within a coordinated urban framework. Military organization was a central aspect of governance. Fortification walls, gates, and defensive towers were constructed using standardized architectural techniques, reflecting knowledge of both Aegean origin practices and regional innovations. The placement of towers overlooking city approaches and maritime routes suggests strategic coordination across the Pentapolis to monitor potential threats. Excavated armaments, including bronze and iron weaponry, demonstrate the existence of trained forces capable of defending individual cities as well as supporting allied Pentapolis defense. The presence of arsenals and evidence of weapons production indicate centralized oversight and controlled distribution, reinforcing the role of governance in maintaining military readiness. Economic regulation was integral to Philistine governance. The cities managed agricultural production, craft specialization, and trade networks through centralized oversight, as evidenced by storage facilities, urban planning, and imported goods. Economic activity extended both inland and across the Mediterranean. Archaeological findings at Ekron and Ashkelon include Cypriot white slip pottery, metal ingots, and craft debris consistent with specialized workshops. These indicate that rulers and administrative authorities actively coordinated both production and trade to support urban populations and sustain the political hierarchy. The Pentapolis also administered land and resource allocation. Archaeological survey of the surrounding hinterlands shows organized agricultural plots, irrigation systems, and terracing that supplied both local populations and urban centers. Resource control included oversight of pasture lands, water sources, and access to maritime routes, ensuring that each city-state could maintain self-sufficiency while contributing to collective Pentapolis security. The ability to mobilize and manage these resources reflects a hierarchical governance system capable of integrating economic, military, and social needs. Social stratification is apparent in the architectural and material record. Residences vary in size and construction, suggesting distinct social classes within the urban population. Larger, centrally located houses, often associated with administrative or elite functions, contrast with smaller, peripheral dwellings for common citizens or artisans. Craft specialization, access to imported goods, and control over agricultural surplus reinforce the existence of social hierarchies, with governance structures coordinating the allocation of resources, labor, and civic responsibilities. Diplomatic and interregional relations were also a function of governance. Evidence of trade with Cyprus, Anatolia, and the Aegean demonstrates the existence of protocols for negotiating imports and exports, while military coordination suggests informal alliances and conflict resolution mechanisms among the city-states. Egyptian inscriptions referring to the Pele-set during earlier periods indicate that Philistine governance included strategic responses to external imperial powers, establishing patterns of tribute, negotiation, and military defense that would later be employed during Neo-Assyrian interactions. By the early 9th century BC, the governance structure of the Philistine city-states had become institutionalized, combining centralized authority with city-state autonomy. Each city maintained internal administration, resource management, and military readiness, while shared standards in fortifications, trade, and material culture illustrate effective inter-city coordination. This political system enabled the Pentapolis to sustain urban populations, regulate complex economic networks, and maintain strategic influence along the southern Levantine coast. The historical record confirms that Philistine governance was both structured and adaptive. Archaeological and inscriptional evidence illustrates that rulers exercised control over economic, military, and social aspects of urban life, while allowing for autonomy within each city. Military fortifications, urban planning, and trade networks provide verifiable indicators of governance and practice, demonstrating a functioning political system capable of addressing both internal and external challenges. In sum, the Philistine Pentapolis during this period exemplifies a cohesive yet decentralized political model. Each city retained autonomy and local administration, while shared standards, strategic coordination, and economic integration facilitated collective action. Military readiness, urban planning, and economic regulation reflect hierarchical governance capable of sustaining a complex urban society, while adaptation to local resources and social integration demonstrates pragmatic flexibility. This period of political consolidation and governance provided the foundation for subsequent interactions with external empires, including Assyria, and ensured the historical resilience of the Philistine city-states for several centuries. By 900 BC, the Philistine political system had matured into a durable and verifiable model of early Iron Age urban governance, combining localized authority with confederated coordination. The structure enabled economic growth, military organization, and cultural integration, sustaining the Pentapolis as a cohesive entity within the southern Levant. Archaeological, inscriptional, and material evidence collectively establish this system as historically documented, fully distinct from myth or legend, and verifiable as an example of organized urban governance during the early Iron Age. By the early 1st millennium BC, the Philistine Pentapolis, comprising Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath, had established itself as a stable network of urban centers along the southern Levantine coast. During the period c. 900 to 700 BC, the emergence of the Neo-Assyrian Empire under rulers such as Adad-nirari II, Tukulti-Ninurta II, and Ashurnasirpal II introduced a new dynamic into the region, resulting in sustained political, military, and economic pressure on the Philistine city-states. Assyrian records, including royal inscriptions and administrative annals, provide direct historical evidence of these encounters, documenting tribute payments, political subjugation, and occasional military campaigns, while archaeological data corroborates shifts in urban infrastructure, fortifications, and material culture across the Pentapolis. The earliest contacts between the Neo-Assyrian Empire and the Philistine cities appear to have been diplomatic and economic in nature. Assyrian records from the late 10th and early 9th centuries BC indicate that coastal city-states in the Levant, including Ekron, Ashdod, and Ashkelon, entered into agreements with the empire, providing tribute in silver, agricultural products, and luxury goods. These records, inscribed in Akkadian on clay tablets and monumental stelae, list the names of city rulers and the quantities of tribute delivered, confirming the continued autonomy of local kings under nominal Assyrian suzerainty. Such arrangements allowed the Assyrians to extend influence without the immediate need for military occupation, while ensuring access to valuable trade and agricultural resources from the Philistine coastal corridor. Archaeological evidence supports the imposition of Assyrian influence. Excavations at Ekron reveal changes in urban architecture and fortification patterns, including the construction of larger gates and defensive walls that align chronologically with Assyrian campaigns in the southern Levant. Assyrian-style administrative practices, including the use of stamped cylinder seals and standardized storage facilities for tribute goods, indicate integration of local governance into the broader Assyrian imperial system. These modifications did not erase local autonomy, but represent adaptive administrative incorporation, allowing city-states to maintain internal governance while fulfilling obligations to a superior imperial power. Military campaigns also played a role in shaping Philistine-Assyrian relations. Assyrian annals describe punitive expeditions against rebellious or non-compliant coastal cities, including Ashkelon and Gath. These campaigns often resulted in temporary occupation, fortification reinforcement, and enforced tribute, demonstrating the Assyrian capacity to project power while maintaining urban continuity. Archaeological layers corresponding to this period include partial destruction, rapid rebuilding, and shifts in material culture consistent with Assyrian influence, particularly in the standardization of urban infrastructure, weaponry, and administrative facilities. Cultural assimilation accelerated during this period. Aegean-derived material traits, such as bichrome pottery, declined in prominence, while Levantine and Near Eastern forms became dominant. Imported Assyrian goods, including luxury ceramics, metalwork, and standardized weights, indicate integration into wider imperial economic networks. Simultaneously, local craft production adapted to imperial demand, producing goods suitable for trade or tribute. The Philistine cities retained core elements of their cultural identity, yet the cumulative effect of Assyrian influence resulted in a visible transformation of material culture and urban practice. Economically, the Assyrian presence strengthened the integration of Philistine cities into regional and inter-regional trade networks. Assyrian records indicate that tribute deliveries included grain, olive oil, and textile products, while imports into the Pentapolis included metal, pottery, and luxury items from Mesopotamia and Anatolia. Archaeological assemblages from Ashdod, Ekron, and Ashkelon document a substantial increase in imported ceramics and metallurgical items during this period. These exchanges suggest that Assyrian hegemony not only imposed political control, but also facilitated commercial opportunities, linking Philistine economic production with broader imperial markets. Philistine governance adapted to this external pressure. Local kings continued to rule, but they were required to coordinate with Assyrian officials regarding tribute, military support, and urban administration. Evidence from Ekron includes inscribed dedicatory objects mentioning kings alongside references to imperial authority, demonstrating a dual system of governance in which local rulers retained civic authority under overarching imperial suzerainty. Administrative continuity, such as the maintenance of urban councils and economic management structures, ensured that cities remained functional despite external oversight. The political landscape of the Pentapolis during Assyrian encounters was marked by negotiated autonomy, tribute obligations, and military vigilance. Archaeological and textual sources demonstrate that the Philistines were neither fully independent nor entirely subjugated, but occupied a middle ground that allowed the Pentapolis to remain cohesive, sustain economic productivity, and maintain defensive readiness. Fortifications were reinforced, arsenals maintained, and urban layouts adapted to meet both internal needs and imperial expectations. The strategic location of the Pentapolis along the coast, controlling maritime trade and agricultural hinterlands, gave the Philistines leverage even under Assyrian oversight. Cultural identity remained resilient despite these pressures. Burial practices, dietary habits, and urban organization continued to reflect a Philistine Aegean and Levantine synthesis, even as Assyrian influence reshaped certain material forms. This demonstrates that while external powers imposed structural changes, the Pentapolis maintained continuity in core cultural practices. The Philistines' ability to integrate external influence without losing distinctiveness illustrates the adaptive capacity of their society, enabling them to navigate the political and economic demands of imperial hegemony. The Assyrian period also provides a chronological marker for the transition of the Philistines from an autonomous confederation toward greater external dependency. By the late 8th century BC, city-states such as Ekron were fully incorporated into Assyrian administrative frameworks, serving as centers for tribute collection and regional control. Archaeological evidence indicates urban reorganization, including expansion of storage facilities, administrative buildings, and fortifications, aligned with imperial oversight. Despite this incorporation, other cities, particularly Gath and Gaza, retained partial autonomy, reflecting uneven imperial control and continued regional influence of the Pentapolis. By 700 BC, the cumulative effects of Assyrian political, military, and economic influence had reshaped the Pentapolis. Urban infrastructure, material culture, and governance structures bore the marks of imperial integration, yet the Philistines retained sufficient cohesion to continue functioning as distinct city-states. Trade networks remained active, fortifications were maintained, and local rulers continued to exercise authority under the suzerainty of Assyria. This period represents both a high point in documented Philistine-Assyrian interaction and a precursor to the decline that would follow with Babylonian expansion in the 7th century BC. By the late 8th and 7th centuries BC, the Philistine Pentapolis, comprising Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath, faced mounting external pressures that would ultimately lead to the erosion of their political autonomy. This period, c. 700 to 604 BC, is documented through a combination of Assyrian imperial records, Babylonian chronicles, and archaeological evidence, revealing a sequence of campaigns, tribute impositions, urban destruction, and eventual assimilation into broader Levantine populations. The decline of the Pentapolis was neither sudden nor uniform. It unfolded over decades as the Philistines contended with the expansionist ambitions of the Neo-Assyrian Empire and subsequently the Neo-Babylonian Empire, each seeking control over the strategic southern Levantine coastal corridor. Assyrian dominance over the Philistine cities intensified during the late 8th century BC, particularly under Sargon II, 722 to 705 BC, and his successors. Assyrian royal inscriptions record the imposition of tribute on the coastal city-states, including Ekron, Ashdod, and Ashkelon, as part of the empire's systematic consolidation of the Levant. Tribute included silver, agricultural produce, textiles, and other resources vital to sustaining the Assyrian state. Archaeological evidence from this period corroborates textual accounts, with urban strata indicating construction projects, fortification reinforcement, and standardized administrative structures aligned with imperial requirements. While the Philistine cities retained nominal kings, these rulers effectively operated as vassals under Assyrian authority, their autonomy constrained by the demands of the empire. Military campaigns during this era contributed directly to the decline of the Pentapolis independence. Assyrian annals describe punitive expeditions against rebellious or strategically important cities, including Ashkelon and Gath, as part of a broader effort to secure trade routes and maintain control over the fertile coastal plains. Archaeological layers show destruction horizons, often followed by rapid rebuilding, reflecting the imposition of Assyrian authority and subsequent urban restructuring. Fortifications were repaired, gates expanded, and urban layouts modified to accommodate Assyrian administrative needs, including storage facilities for tribute and militarily strategic installations. These interventions illustrate the progressive erosion of local self-determination in favor of imperial control. The 7th century BC brought the rise of the Neo-Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar II, 605 to 562 BC, whose campaigns in the southern Levant further destabilized the Philistine cities. Babylonian records, corroborated by archaeological evidence, indicate that Babylonian military expeditions targeted key urban centers along the coast, including Gaza, Ashkelon, and Gath. Destruction layers at these sites, characterized by fire damage, collapsed fortifications, and abandonment of domestic areas, reflect the direct impact of the Babylonian conquest. Unlike the partial autonomy allowed under Assyria, Babylonian campaigns resulted in more definitive subjugation, with local rulers displaced or absorbed into the imperial administrative hierarchy. The cumulative effect of Assyrian and Babylonian interventions was a progressive reduction of political and military capacity. By the early 6th century BC, the Philistine city-states no longer functioned as autonomous entities. Their urban populations, though not entirely displaced, experienced significant disruption in governance, trade networks, and economic production. Archaeological evidence shows the contraction of settlement areas, abandonment of certain urban quarters, and a marked decline in locally distinctive material culture, including the cessation of traditional bichrome pottery production and a shift toward regional Levantine forms. These changes illustrate cultural assimilation and economic integration into broader imperial structures. The decline also manifested in shifts in social organization. Residential patterns indicate reduced social stratification, with the disappearance of large elite houses and administrative complexes. Craft production and trade appear centralized or redirected under imperial oversight, diminishing the independence of local artisans and economic networks. Burial practices converge with regional Levantine norms, suggesting both demographic assimilation and the erosion of distinctive Philistine cultural markers. By 604 BC, the Pentapolis had effectively lost its independent identity, and the Philistines were absorbed into the larger population of the southern Levant, leaving a verifiable archaeological and historical footprint without continued political autonomy. Economically, the Philistine cities underwent reorientation under imperial control. Trade routes that had previously linked the Pentapolis with Cyprus, the Aegean, and inland Canaan were disrupted or redirected, with imports and exports managed to serve imperial priorities. Archaeological evidence demonstrates a reduction in the circulation of imported luxury goods, while local production focused increasingly on meeting the demands of vassalage or tribute obligations. Urban infrastructure, including storage facilities and workshops, reflects this reorientation, highlighting the economic constraints imposed by imperial dominance. The decline of the Pentapolis also coincided with broader regional transformations. The rise of Babylon as the dominant power in the Near East reshaped political boundaries, trade networks, and population movements. Philistine cities, previously central to maritime and coastal commerce, were subordinated to imperial logistics and military strategy. As a result, the traditional balance of power in the southern Levant shifted, with neighboring populations, Canaanite, Israelite, and Judean, also integrated into the evolving imperial framework. Philistine participation in regional affairs diminished, and their cities became nodes within a larger imperial system rather than independent centers of influence. Cultural markers of Philistine identity persisted temporarily in material remains but gradually faded. Archaeological layers revealed declines in Aegean-derived pottery forms, unique architectural styles, and localized burial practices, replaced by Levantine conventions consistent with broader regional norms. This process of cultural assimilation reflects both demographic integration and the loss of institutional mechanisms that had previously supported distinctive Philistine governance and society. By the end of the 7th century BC, the distinctive Philistine culture was largely historical rather than contemporary, identifiable primarily through archaeological strata and inscriptions rather than ongoing urban administration or independent political activity. The historical documentation of this decline is supported by multiple independent sources. Assyrian annals provide detailed accounts of tribute, military campaigns, and administrative integration, while Babylonian chronicles confirm conquest and subjugation under Nebuchadnezzar II. Archaeological data, including destruction layers, changes in urban planning, material culture, and settlement contraction, corroborate these textual sources. The convergence of multiple lines of evidence allows for a precise and verifiable reconstruction of the decline of the Philistine Pentapolis between 700 to 604 BC. By 604 BC, the Philistines had lost political independence, and their identity as a distinct coastal polity had effectively disappeared. The Pentapolis no longer functioned as a network of autonomous city-states, and its inhabitants were subsumed into broader Levantine populations. Archaeological evidence shows the final abandonment or transformation of major urban centers, accompanied by the disappearance of uniquely Philistine cultural artifacts. The historical record confirms a gradual process of decline and assimilation, consistent with broader patterns of imperial expansion and demographic change in the southern Levant during the Late Iron Age. The Philistines, who inhabited the southern Levantine coast from approximately 1200 BC to 604 BC, left a significant historical and archaeological legacy that provides insight into migration, urbanization, cultural adaptation, and regional integration in the early Iron Age. Though by 604 BC the Philistines had lost political independence and were largely assimilated into the broader Levantine population, the material record of their presence endures across multiple domains, including urban architecture, craft production, inscriptions, burial practices, and economic infrastructure. These remains allow for a precise reconstruction of their 6th century occupation and illustrate the dynamic processes of cultural synthesis and adaptation that characterize the Pentapolis and its interactions with neighboring societies. Archaeological evidence demonstrates the enduring urban imprint of the Philistines along the southern coastal plain. The 5 principal cities, Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath, exhibit continuous urban development, fortification, and settlement planning throughout their occupation. Excavations reveal layers of construction and reconstruction that illustrate cycles of conflict, economic prosperity, and strategic adaptation. Fortified city walls, gates, and towers provide clear testimony to their concern with defense, urban cohesion, and control over surrounding territories. Urban layouts, including residential quarters, storage facilities, craft workshops, and communal spaces, reflect both Aegean-derived architectural principles and local Levantine adaptations, underscoring the Philistines' capacity to merge cultural traditions into sustainable urban environments. Material culture is central to the understanding of the Philistine legacy. Bichrome pottery, with its geometric and figurative motifs, persisted into the early phases of the Pentapolis, evidencing their Aegean origins. Over time, these forms hybridized with Canaanite ceramic traditions, resulting in a unique stylistic blend visible in domestic, commercial, and ritual contexts. Metalworking, including bronze and later iron tools and weapons, demonstrates technological expertise and integration into Mediterranean trade networks. Archaeological assemblages show continuity in craft specialization across multiple cities, suggesting shared techniques, standards, and economic cooperation throughout the Pentapolis. The Philistines' burial practices provide further evidence of their distinct cultural footprint. Chamber tombs, ashen interments, and associated grave goods reflect both Aegean and Levantine traditions, illustrating a selective adoption of local norms alongside inherited customs. Variations in tomb construction, orientation, and associated artifacts indicate social stratification, while the persistence of certain Aegean-style elements underscores the enduring influence of the original culture over successive generations. Analysis of skeletal remains and associated material confirms dietary adaptation, with a shift toward locally available resources while maintaining elements of imported or Aegean culinary practice. This demonstrates the intersection of cultural continuity and environmental adaptation, a hallmark of Philistine society. Inscriptions and administrative records contribute to the historical legacy of the Philistines, particularly during the later phases of the Pentapolis. Excavations at Ekron and other sites have uncovered inscribed dedicatory objects and seal impressions documenting local rulers, religious dedications, and economic transactions. These artifacts provide direct evidence of political organization, urban administration, and interaction with regional powers, including the Assyrians. Unlike later textual or legendary sources, these inscriptions offer verifiable documentation of governance, civic life, and economic practice, establishing the Philistines as a historically grounded people with structured societal institutions. The Philistines' interactions with neighboring populations further illustrate their historical significance. Trade networks linked the Pentapolis with Cyprus, Anatolia, the Aegean, and inland Canaanite territories, facilitating the movement of goods, ideas, and technologies. Archaeological evidence, including imported ceramics, metal ingots, and luxury items, documents the Philistines' participation in regional economic exchange. Military encounters, documented in both material layers and textual sources, demonstrate their capacity to resist or negotiate with Israelite groups, Canaanite settlements, and later imperial powers. These interactions underscore the Philistines' role as both a regional actor and a conduit for cultural and economic transmission across the southern Levant. The processes of cultural hybridization and adaptation established by the Philistines had lasting implications for the southern Levant. By integrating Aegean traditions with Canaanite practices, the Philistines created a distinctive yet adaptable cultural identity that influenced urban planning, material production, and social organization across the region. The Pentapolis endurance for over 6 centuries reflects the effectiveness of this synthesis, demonstrating the historical reality of migration, settlement, and integration into existing Levantine frameworks. Archaeological continuity across the cities attests to sustained urban life, economic resilience, and adaptive governance in a landscape characterized by shifting political and military pressures. Even after the decline of the Pentapolis under Assyrian and Babylonian conquest, the Philistines' material imprint persisted. Fortifications, urban layouts, craft traditions, and burial practices continued to shape the southern coastal plain, influencing subsequent settlement patterns and regional cultural norms. Although the Philistines ceased to exist as a politically independent group by 604 BC, their integration into broader Levantine populations ensured that elements of their culture persisted in the archaeological and socioeconomic record. This enduring presence highlights the long-term impact of migration, adaptation, and urbanization in shaping historical trajectories in the southern Levant. The historical legacy of the Philistines is further reinforced by the ability to reconstruct their society through verifiable evidence. Unlike mythological or theological narratives, the archaeological and inscriptional record provides a consistent, corroborated account of Philistine settlement, urban development, governance, material culture, and regional interaction. The 6th century history of the Pentapolis illustrates patterns of resilience, adaptation, and assimilation, offering insight into the dynamics of early Iron Age urban civilizations in the Levant. The Pentapolis occupation of the southern Levantine coast serves as a case study of migration, settlement, urban development, and cultural hybridization. By 604 BC, political autonomy had ended, but the historical and archaeological imprint of the Philistines provides a lasting record of their presence, shaping scholarly understanding of early Iron Age societies and contributing to the broader narrative of Mediterranean and Near Eastern history. The Philistines exemplify the interplay between migration, adaptation, and regional integration, illustrating how an Aegean-derived population successfully established itself within Canaanite society, navigated successive imperial pressures, and maintained cultural distinctiveness for over 6 centuries. Their legacy, preserved in urban infrastructure, material culture inscriptions, and regional interactions, provides a rich, verifiable historical record, allowing modern historians to reconstruct the political, economic, and social dynamics of the southern Levantine coast without reliance on legend or hearsay. The historical narrative of the Philistines, from initial migration to assimilation under Babylonian conquest, demonstrates the durability of material and institutional culture even in the absence of political independence. Their adaptation to local environments, engagement in trade networks, development of urban governance, and hybrid cultural practices collectively ensure that the Philistines remain a key subject for the study of early Iron Age history. The archaeological record affirms their enduring influence, confirming the Philistines as a definitive example of a coastal Levantine civilization whose 6th century occupation and subsequent assimilation provide insight into the processes of urbanization, migration, and cultural synthesis in the ancient Near East. By 604 BC, the Philistines had ceased to exist as an independent political entity, their cities either destroyed or absorbed into the expanding Neo-Babylonian realm. Their distinct Aegean-influenced material culture, urban organization, and governance structures had largely disappeared, leaving only archaeological and inscriptional traces. Despite the loss of autonomy, the Philistines' legacy endures in the archaeological record, which provides a clear, verifiable account of a people who migrated, adapted, and thrived along the southern Levantine coast for over 6 centuries. Their history demonstrates the dynamics of cultural hybridization, economic integration, and political resilience. The Pentapolis represents an example of how migration and settlement can establish durable urban societies capable of negotiating external pressures while maintaining elements of cultural identity. Through trade, urban planning, fortification, and administrative systems, the Philistines left an enduring imprint on the southern Levant, influencing subsequent regional development long after their political independence ended. Ultimately, the Philistines illustrate a historically verifiable case of a coastal civilization whose origins, evolution, and assimilation are documented through material culture, inscriptions, and urban remnants, providing a rich and continuous record of human adaptation, migration, and cultural synthesis in the early Iron Age Near East. Their story is preserved not in legend, but in the physical and textual evidence that allows modern scholars to reconstruct their society with precision and confidence.